3 weeks had passed since the Harmony's Edge began secretly watching Earth. The alien crew had set up hidden observation posts on the planet's moon and in orbit around the planet itself. What they learned during those weeks confused and amazed them every day. Researcher Lim Soo-jin spent most of her time studying human behavior through the long-range sensors. She had studied hundreds of alien civilizations before, but humans made no sense to her. They seemed to break every rule about how intelligent species were supposed to develop. "Captain, I need to show you something," she said to Minho as he visited her laboratory. "These humans are doing things that shouldn't be possible." She pulled up videos and data from the past few weeks on her screens. "Look at this city in the eastern part of their largest continent. Yesterday, 2 groups of humans had a violent disagreement that lasted several hours. They threw objects at each other and caused significant property damage." Minho nodded. "That sounds normal for early civilizations. Competition and violence are common when species are still developing." "Wait, there's more," Soo-jin continued. 6 hours after the violence ended, members from both groups worked together to clean up the damage. Then they organized a large gathering where thousands of humans came together to discuss how to prevent similar violence in the future. She switched to another video. And here's something even stranger. This human community was hit by a natural disaster last week. A storm destroyed hundreds of their dwellings. Within 2 days, humans from other communities hundreds of miles away arrived with food, building materials, and medical supplies. They worked for free to help people they had never met before. Minho stared at the images. In his experience, most species only helped members of their own tribe or family group. Helping complete strangers was almost unknown in early civilizations. "It gets weirder, Captain," Soo-jin said. "Watch this." She showed him footage of a human military installation. These humans have weapons that could destroy their entire planet. But instead of using them against each other, they've spent decades creating agreements to control these weapons. They actually work together to prevent wars. This was completely against everything they knew about species development. Most civilizations that developed powerful weapons either used them to destroy each other, or were conquered by stronger groups that used the weapons to control everyone else. Meanwhile, engineer Yoon Ji-woo was having his own surprises studying human technology. He had set up monitoring equipment to analyze human machines and engineering projects. "Dr. Park," he called to the ship's science officer, "come look at this human transportation device." Park Nari came over to his workstation. On the screen was a detailed analysis of what humans called an airplane. "It's so primitive," Yoon Ji-woo said, "but also brilliant. They use controlled explosions to create thrust, and they shape the wings to use air pressure for lift. It's thousands of years behind our anti-gravity systems, but it works perfectly for their level of technology." He brought up more examples. "Look at their computers. They use electrical signals moving through tiny pathways to process information. It's incredibly basic compared to our quantum processors, but they've connected millions of these devices across their entire planet. They've created a global information network using Stone Age technology." Park Nari studied the data. "Their internet system carries almost as much information as our galactic data web, but they built it with metal wires and radio waves. How is that possible?" "That's not even the most impressive part," Yoon Ji-woo continued. "Watch how they solve problems." He showed her footage of human engineers working on a damaged bridge. They don't have the right materials or tools for the job, so they improvise. They use completely different materials in ways they were never designed for, and somehow make it work. He pulled up dozens of similar examples. Humans fixing spacecraft with materials meant for kitchen appliances. Human doctors performing surgery with tools designed for completely different purposes. Human scientists building research equipment from spare parts found in garbage dumps. "They're so adaptable," Yoon Ji-woo said with admiration. "When we encounter a problem, we use the correct tool designed for that specific purpose. When humans encounter a problem, they use whatever they have available and make it work somehow." Dr. Park Nari was making her own discoveries about human biology and genetics. What she found disturbed her more each day. "Captain, we need to talk privately," she said to Minho one evening. They met in his quarters where their conversation couldn't be overheard by the rest of the crew. "I've been analyzing human DNA samples from hair and skin cells we collected," she said. "Something is very wrong with their genetic development." She showed him complex genetic charts on her portable screen. "Humans show signs of extremely rapid evolution over just the past few thousand years. Their brain capacity, their physical adaptations, even their social instincts have changed far faster than natural selection should allow." Minho studied the data. "What could cause that kind of acceleration?" "I don't know," Parknari admitted. "But it's not natural. Something has been influencing human development. The changes are too coordinated, too beneficial to be random mutations." She brought up more genetic information. "Look at this. Human DNA contains sequences that don't appear in any of their planet's other life forms. It's almost like someone added extra genetic information that wasn't there originally." "Are you saying someone interfered with their evolution?" "That's the only explanation that makes sense. But Captain, if that's true, then humans aren't a natural species. They're the result of genetic engineering by some advanced civilization." This news worried Minho greatly. If humans were artificially created, then somewhere in the galaxy there was a species advanced enough to design and build an entire intelligent race, a species powerful enough to guide evolution itself. "Have you found any evidence of who might have done this?" he asked. "Not yet. But Captain, there's something else. The genetic modifications appear to be ongoing. Human DNA is still changing, still evolving, but in directions that seem planned rather than random." Over the following days, each member of the observation team made similar discoveries. Lim Soo-jin found that human societies had independently developed philosophical and ethical systems that took most species thousands of years to create. Humans had concepts of individual rights, scientific methods, and democratic governance that were more advanced than many spacefaring civilizations. Yoon. Jiwoo discovered that human technology, while primitive, showed signs of remarkable innovation. They had developed manufacturing techniques, communication systems, and energy production methods that were more efficient than the standard approaches used by most galactic collective species. Lieutenant Choi Do-hyun, who had been monitoring human space programs, made perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. "Captain, the humans are learning faster than they should be," he reported. 3 weeks ago, their most advanced rockets could barely reach orbit around their planet. Yesterday, I detected a launch that achieved much higher performance than should be possible with their technology." He showed Minho the data from the launch. "It's like they suddenly understood principles that should have taken them years to discover. Their space technology is advancing at an impossible rate." As the weeks passed, the alien crew began to realize they weren't just observing an unusual civilization. They were watching something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans were developing capabilities and knowledge faster than any known species. They were solving problems, creating technologies, and forming social structures that suggested intelligence, far beyond what their primitive tools should allow. "Captain," Parknari said during one of their daily briefings, "I think we need to consider the possibility that humans aren't just another species. They might be something entirely new." Minho looked around the table at his crew. Each of them had decades of experience studying alien civilizations, but none of them had ever seen anything like humanity. "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I think humans might be an experiment," she said carefully. "Someone or something has been guiding their development, preparing them for a specific purpose, and I think that purpose is about to be revealed." As if to confirm her words, Lieutenant Do-hyun's monitoring station began beeping with an urgent alert. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings from multiple human installations across the planet. Something big is happening down there." Minho realized their time as hidden observers was about to end. Whatever humans were becoming, the process was accelerating. Soon, they would have to decide whether to make contact, flee, or simply watch, as humanity transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge and watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. After 3 months of travel through deep space, they had finally reached their destination. The third planet of this yellow star system looked beautiful from space, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown landmasses. "Captain, we're picking up some strange signals from the planet," said Dr. Park Nari from her science station. She was the ship's best expert on alien life forms. Her long black hair was tied back as she focused on her readings. These electromagnetic patterns are not natural. Something down there is making them. Minho walked over to look at her screen. The data showed regular patterns that repeated every few seconds. In their 20 years of exploring the galaxy, they had seen these kinds of signals before. They usually came from civilizations that had just learned to use electricity. How advanced do you think they are? Minho asked. Park Nari shook her head. It's hard to tell from up here. The signals are stronger than we usually see from early civilizations, but they're still using very basic technology compared to us. Lieutenant Choi Do-yun turned around from his pilot station. He was young for a ship's pilot, only 25 years old, but he was one of the best the Galactic Research Collective had ever trained. Captain, should I prepare a shuttle for the surface? We need to get closer to understand what we're dealing with. Minho nodded. Yes, but we follow standard protocol. No direct contact with the natives until we know more about them. We observe first, then decide what to do next. The Harmony's Edge was not a military ship. It belonged to the Terran Research Collective, a group of alien species that worked together to study new worlds and civilizations. Most planets they visited had simple life forms like plants and animals. Sometimes they found intelligent beings, but these were usually at very early stages of development. They might have learned to make fire or simple tools, but nothing more advanced than that. This planet was different. The signals they were picking up suggested the beings here had learned to use electricity and radio waves. This was rare but not unknown. The collective had found maybe 50 planets with civilizations at this level in the past 1,000 years. Dr. Park, what can you tell us about the life forms down there? Minho asked. Park Nari pulled up more data on her screen. The atmosphere is perfect for carbon-based life. Lots of oxygen and water vapor. I'm seeing signs of large population centers on several continents. The electromagnetic activity is strongest around these areas. She pointed to bright spots on the planet's surface. These look like cities, Captain. Big ones. I count at least 100 major population centers across the planet. Minho frowned. This was unusual. Most civilizations they found were still living in small groups or tribes. To have hundreds of cities suggested a level of organization they rarely saw in pre-space civilizations. Any signs of space travel? He asked. I'm detecting some artificial objects in orbit, said Do-yun from his station. They're small and primitive, but they're definitely made by the planet's inhabitants. Simple satellites, I think. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. Satellites meant the beings down there had rocket technology. They had actually left their planet's surface and put objects in space. This was extremely rare. In all his years of exploration, Minho had only found 3 civilizations that had achieved spaceflight on their own. Captain, Park Nari said quietly, there's something else. I'm picking up energy signatures that suggest they have nuclear technology. Not just power plants, but weapons too. The bridge fell silent. Nuclear weapons were a sign of a very dangerous stage in a civilization's development. Most species either destroyed themselves with these weapons or learned to control them and move forward. The fact that this planet still existed suggested its inhabitants had been wise enough not to destroy themselves. All right, Minho said finally. We need to be very careful here. Do-hyun, take the shuttle down for a closer look. Stay high enough that they can't detect you. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we make any decisions. Do-hyun nodded and headed for the shuttle bay. He took 2 other crew members with him. Engineer Yoon Ji-woo, who was an expert on alien technology, and researcher Lim Soo-jin, who studied alien cultures and societies. As the shuttle flew down through the planet's atmosphere, the 3 aliens got their first close look at this strange world. What they saw amazed them. The cities were huge, much larger than anything they had expected. Millions of beings lived in each one, in tall buildings that reached high into the sky. Roads connected the cities, and vehicles moved along them in organized patterns. The beings had not just learned to live together in large groups, they had created a global civilization. Look at those transportation systems, Yoon Ji-woo said, pointing to long metal tracks with fast-moving vehicles on them. They've figured out how to move large numbers of people efficiently across great distances. And their communication networks, Lim Soo-jin added. I'm detecting radio waves, microwave signals, and something that looks like a primitive version of our data networks. They're all connected to each other across the entire planet. Do-hyun carefully guided the shuttle over one of the largest cities. Below them, millions of the planet's inhabitants went about their daily lives. The beings looked similar to some species they had encountered before, walking upright on two legs with two arms and a head on top. But their behavior was fascinating. They're so organized, Lim Soo-jin observed. Look how they move in patterns, following rules, working together. Most early civilizations we find are chaotic and disorganized. These beings have created complex societies. Captain, Do-hyun called back to the ship. You need to see this. I'm transmitting video now. On the Harmony's edge, Minho watched the images from the shuttle with growing amazement. The beings on this planet had not just survived their early development, they had thrived. They had created art, music, literature, and complex scientific institutions. They had universities where they studied the universe around them. They had hospitals where they cared for their sick. They had governments that, while not perfect, seemed to work well enough to maintain peace across most of the planet. Captain, Park Nari said softly, this is unprecedented. In all our records, we've never found a civilization that achieved this level of development completely on their own. She was right. Every advanced civilization the collective had encountered had either been uplifted by older species or had found ancient technology left behind by previous civilizations. But this planet showed no signs of outside interference. These beings had done everything themselves, starting from nothing. There's something else, Captain, Do-hyun reported from the shuttle. I'm detecting launch sites for their space vehicles. They have active rocket programs. Some of these installations look like they're preparing for missions to other planets in their system. Minho made a decision that would change everything. Instead of following standard first contact procedures, which required them to announce their presence to any civilization with space travel capability, he chose to wait and observe. All teams maintain position and continue observation. We're going to study these beings more carefully before we make contact. Something this unusual deserves our full attention. As the Harmony's edge settled into a hidden orbit behind one of the planet's moons, none of the crew realized they had just discovered something that would reshape their understanding of intelligent life in the universe. The beings on the blue planet called themselves humans, and they were about to prove that evolution could take paths no one had ever imagined possible. The encrypted message from Galactic Command arrived during the night shift, when only essential crew members were awake. Captain Kang Minho read it 3 times before he fully understood what it meant. This planet should not exist, the message said. Our oldest star charts show this system as having only gas giants and dead rocks. No habitable worlds, no life. Find out what changed. Minho called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Dr. Park Nari, Engineer Yoon Ji-woo, researcher, Lim Soo-jin, and Lieutenant Choi Do-hyun gathered in the ship's main conference room. Command says Earth wasn't supposed to be here, Minho told them. According to records that are 50,000 years old, this planet was lifeless. That's impossible, Park Nari said. It takes millions of years for a planet to develop complex life. You can't just create an entire biosphere in 50,000 years. Unless someone did it on purpose, Lim Soo-jin suggested quietly. They all stared at her. The idea that someone could create an entire living world was almost too big to imagine. I've been thinking about the genetic anomalies we found in humans, Park Nari continued. What if Earth itself is artificial? What if someone took a dead planet and made it into a garden specifically for humans? Minho ordered a complete analysis of Earth's geological and biological systems. What they found over the next few days shocked them even more than the mystery of human development. Earth's geology showed signs of massive terraforming projects that had been completed exactly 53,000 years ago. Someone had changed the planet's atmosphere, moved its oceans, and even adjusted its orbit to make it perfect for life. But the real discovery came when Dr. Park Nari finished her deep genetic analysis of human DNA. Captain, I found something incredible, she announced during their morning briefing. Hidden in human genetic code are instructions written by whoever created them. It's like a message left behind by their makers. She displayed complex genetic sequences on the main screen. This isn't random DNA. This is information storage like a library written in genetic code, and I think I can translate part of it. Working. For 2 days straight, Park Nari decoded sections of the hidden genetic information. What she found was a message that explained everything. We are the progenitors. The genetic message began. We are the first species to achieve perfect knowledge of life and death, of matter and energy, of time and space. We have explored every corner of this galaxy and found it empty of true greatness. We created you humans to be what we could never become. We gave you our knowledge, but also something we lost long ago. The ability to grow, to change, to become more than you are. When your species reaches the stars, you will find civilizations that have stopped growing. They have achieved stability, but they have lost the spark that drives evolution forward. You will teach them to dream again. The message continued for thousands of genetic sequences, explaining how the progenitors had spent millions of years preparing Earth as a nursery for humanity. They had guided human evolution through careful genetic programming that would activate at specific stages of development. But here's the most important part, Park Nari said, highlighting a section of the genetic code. The final activation sequence begins when humans make contact with other intelligent species. Meeting us triggers the last stage of their transformation. You mean we've started something just by being here? Minho asked. Not just started it, we're accelerating it. Every day we observe humans. Every scan we perform. Every piece of information we gather about them creates a quantum connection between our consciousness and theirs. We're accidentally transferring knowledge to them through this connection. Engineer Yunjiwoo had been monitoring human technology during their conversation. Captain, she's right. I'm detecting impossible advances in human engineering over just the past week. They're developing fusion power, quantum computers, and faster-than-light communication theories. They're learning things they shouldn't be able to understand for decades. Researcher Lim Soo-jin added her own observations. Their societies are also changing rapidly. Political systems that took us thousands of years to develop are appearing in human communities within days. They're forming global alliances and cooperation agreements at an incredible pace. Lieutenant Choi Do-yoon's monitoring equipment began, showing urgent alerts. Captain, human space activities are increasing dramatically. I count 12 new launch sites that have been built in the past week. Their rockets are using propulsion systems that shouldn't exist yet. On the main screen, they watched as a human spacecraft launched from Earth using technology that was clearly beyond their previous capabilities. The ship moved through space with grace and efficiency that rivaled their own vessels. The genetic programming is working exactly as the progenitors designed it, Park Nari explained. Humans aren't just learning new technology. They're remembering it. All of this knowledge was already stored in their genetic code, waiting to be activated. But as they watched human development accelerate, another disturbing possibility occurred. To Minho, if the progenitors were so advanced, what happened to them? Why aren't they still around? Park Nari pulled up more sections of the genetic message. They explain that here. The progenitors reached a point where they had learned everything there was to know, achieved everything there was to achieve. They became immortal, all-powerful, and completely bored. They died of perfection, she continued. Without challenges to overcome or new things to discover, they lost the will to continue existing. Their final project was creating humanity to carry on where they left off. But with one crucial difference, Lim Soo-jin added, studying the genetic data. Humans were designed never to reach that final stage of perfection. They'll always have the drive to grow, to explore, to become better. They'll never stop evolving. As if to prove her point, the monitoring systems detected another human spacecraft launching from Earth. This one was larger and more advanced than the previous ship. It was also heading directly toward their position. Captain, Do-hyun reported, with tension in his voice. The human vessel is using faster-than-light communication to scan our location. They know we're here. How is that possible? Minho demanded. The quantum connection works both ways, Park Nari realized. While we've been observing them and accidentally sharing our knowledge, they've been learning about us. They know about our technology, our location, even our intentions. The human spacecraft continued approaching their position behind Earth's moon. It was moving at speeds that should have been impossible for a species that had achieved spaceflight only decades earlier. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel," Do-hyun announced. "It's in our language." Minho authorized the communication link. A human face appeared on their main screen. He looked young, but spoke with confidence and intelligence. That seemed far beyond his species' previous capabilities. "Greetings, friends from the Terran Research Collective," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Commander Park Ji-hoon of the human vessel Indomitable Spirit. We have much to discuss." The alien crew stared in amazement. Not only had humans learned their language, but they somehow knew exactly which organization the Harmony's Edge represented. "We know you have been watching us," Commander Park continued. "We know about the genetic message left by the progenitors. We know about our true purpose in this galaxy. And we know that you and your people have accidentally helped us awaken to our full potential." Minho found his voice. "How long have you known we were here?" "Since the day you arrived," the human commander replied with a smile. "The moment your ship entered our solar system, every human on Earth began experiencing strange dreams, sudden insights, and new understanding of the universe around us. We realized we were not alone. We've been preparing for this meeting," Park Ji-hoon continued. "We built this ship using knowledge that came from your observations of us. We learned your language through the quantum connection our minds formed with yours. We are ready to begin the next phase of our development." As the human ship moved closer, Minho realized they had reached a point of no return. First contact was no longer a choice they could make or avoid. Humanity had awakened to its true nature and was ready to take its place in the galaxy. But whether that would be as allies, teachers, or something else entirely remained to be seen. The human ship Indomitable Spirit docked with the Harmony's Edge, using docking procedures that perfectly matched galactic collective standards. Captain Kang Minho watched through the airlock window as Commander Park Ji-hoon and two other humans crossed between the ships. The humans wore spacesuits that looked primitive compared to alien technology, but they moved with confidence and skill that suggested they understood exactly what they were doing. When they removed their helmets in the docking bay, Minho was struck by how normal they looked. These were the same beings his crew had been observing for weeks, but something in their eyes had changed. They looked like people who had suddenly remembered something very important they had forgotten. "Welcome aboard the Harmony's Edge," Minho said formally as he greeted the human delegation in the ship's main conference room. "Thank you for receiving us," Commander Park replied. "I know this situation is unusual for both our species." The two other humans with him introduced themselves as Dr. Lee Soo-jin, a scientist, and engineer Kim Tae-won, who had helped design their ship. Both spoke galactic standard as if they had been studying it for years, instead of learning it through dreams and quantum consciousness connections. "We need to understand what's happening to your people," Dr. Park Nari said directly. "The changes we're observing shouldn't be possible." Dr. Lee Soo-jin smiled. "They shouldn't be possible for a normal species, but we're beginning to understand that humans were never meant to be normal." She pulled out a device that looked like a primitive version of the aliens' data tablets. "May I show you what we've discovered?" The device projected holographic displays that were crude but functional. 3 days ago, every human on Earth began experiencing what we initially thought were shared dreams. But we quickly realized these weren't dreams at all. They were memories. The holographs showed images of vast alien cities, advanced technologies, and species the collective crew recognized from ancient historical records. "Genetic memories from the progenitors," Engineer Yoon Ji-woo said in amazement. "More than that," Engineer Kim Tae-won added. "We're also receiving memories and knowledge from your crew's observations of us. Every scan you performed, every analysis you conducted, created a quantum bridge between our minds. We've learned about your technology, your history, your civilization." Minho felt a chill of concern. Are you saying you've been reading our minds? Not reading, Commander Park explained. Sharing. The connection works both ways. While we've been learning about you, you've also been absorbing aspects of human consciousness. Haven't you noticed changes in your own thinking patterns over the past few weeks? Minho looked around at his crew. Now that the human mentioned it, he had been having unusual thoughts lately. New ideas about problem solving, different approaches to understanding alien cultures, creative solutions to engineering challenges that had never occurred to him before. The progenitors designed this process carefully, Dr. Lee Sujin continued. Humans were created not just to inherit their knowledge, but to share it with other species. We're meant to be teachers and guides for galactic civilization. But we're not conquerors, she added quickly, seeing the worried expressions on the alien faces. We don't want to rule over anyone or force changes on other species. We want to help them unlock their own hidden potential. To demonstrate, Dr. Lee Sujin asked Dr. Park Nari to think about a scientific problem she had been struggling with recently. Park Nari mentioned her difficulty understanding how certain genetic sequences could evolve so quickly. Close your eyes and clear your mind, the human scientist said gently. Don't try to solve the problem. Just let your consciousness relax and accept new perspectives. Within seconds, Park Nari's eyes opened wide with surprise. I can see it now. The genetic changes don't happen through normal evolution. They happen through quantum resonance between DNA molecules when consciousness reaches certain threshold states. How did I know that? She asked in amazement. The knowledge was already in your mind, Dr. Lee Sujin explained. Humans just helped you access it. Every intelligent species has vast untapped potential locked in their consciousness. We're learning to help unlock that potential. Engineer Kim Taewon demonstrated similar abilities with Yoon Ji-woo, helping him solve engineering problems that had puzzled him for years. The human engineer showed him how to think about technology in ways that combined mechanical precision with organic adaptability. This is what the progenitors wanted, Commander Park explained. They created us to find other intelligent species and help them grow beyond their current limitations, not through force or technology transfer, but through consciousness expansion. But as the demonstrations continued, Lieutenant Choi Do-hyun received an urgent message from Galactic Command. The news was not good. Captain, Command is ordering immediate withdrawal from this system, he reported. They're sending a quarantine fleet to isolate Earth and prevent any contact with the inhabitants. The mood in the conference room suddenly became tense. The humans looked concerned but not surprised. We expected this reaction, Commander Park said calmly. Most established civilizations fear change, even positive change. They've achieved stability and don't want anything to disrupt their comfortable existence. But Captain, Dr. Park Nari said urgently, we can't just leave now. The quantum connection we've established with humanity is still active. Breaking it suddenly could cause serious damage to both our minds and theirs. She showed her readings on the medical scanners. The consciousness sharing process has created neural pathways that didn't exist before. Severing the connection abruptly could cause permanent psychological damage to millions of humans, and to our crew as well. Minho faced an impossible decision. If he obeyed Command's orders and withdrew immediately, he would be responsible for harming the very beings they had been sent to study. But if he disobeyed direct orders, he would be ending his career and possibly facing criminal charges. How long would you need to safely disconnect the quantum link? He asked Park Nari. At least several weeks, maybe months. The connection has to fade gradually to avoid trauma. We don't have months, Minho said. The quarantine fleet will be here in days. Commander Park stood up. Captain, there is another option. You could come with us. What do you mean? The human fleet isn't limited to one ship. We've built a dozen vessels using the knowledge we've gained from our connection with you. We're preparing to leave Earth and explore the galaxy, sharing consciousness, expansion with any species willing to learn. Dr. Lee Sujin added, your crew has already been partially awakened through your contact with us. You've gained abilities and insights that your own people might not understand or accept. Coming with us would allow you to continue growing and help us contact other species safely. The idea was appealing but terrifying. Minho looked at his crew. Each of them had indeed changed over the past weeks. They were thinking in new ways, solving problems more creatively, understanding concepts that had been beyond their reach before. "Captain," Engineer Yoon Ji-woo said quietly, "I vote we stay. What we're learning here is more important than following orders from people who don't understand the situation." "I agree," said Dr. Park Nari. "The scientific discoveries we're making could benefit the entire galaxy." Researcher Lim Soo-jin nodded. "The cultural implications alone are worth any risk." Only Lieutenant Do-yoon seemed uncertain. "Captain, what about our families, our homes, our lives in the collective?" Commander Park answered him. "You can always return later, when the collective is ready to accept these new possibilities. But, right now, you have a chance to be part of something unprecedented in galactic history." As if to emphasize his words, the monitoring systems detected multiple ships launching from Earth. The entire human fleet was preparing to depart their home world and begin their mission as consciousness teachers for the galaxy. "Captain," Commander Park said, "we need an answer. The quarantine fleet is approaching and we must leave Earth's system before they arrive. Will you and your crew join us in this next phase of galactic evolution?" Minho looked around at his crew one more time. They had started this mission as simple researchers studying what they thought was a primitive civilization. Now they had the chance to become pioneers of a new form of consciousness, sharing that could transform intelligent life throughout the galaxy. The decision would change everything, not just for them, but potentially for every thinking being in known space. 6 months later, Captain Kang Minho stood on the bridge of a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The vessel was called New Horizons, and it represented a perfect blend of human creativity, alien precision, and progenitor wisdom. The ship's hull curved in organic patterns that seemed to shift and adapt as they traveled through space. The bridge itself felt alive, with surfaces that responded to touch and thought. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler system," announced Lieutenant Choi Do-yoon from the navigation station. He had chosen to stay with the Human-Alien Alliance, and like all the crew members who made that choice, he had continued to develop new abilities over the past months. The Kepler system contained one of the Galactic Collective's oldest colonies, a species called the Valdari, who had achieved spaceflight over 3,000 years ago. They were known for their rigid social structure and resistance to change. "Are they responding to our communication attempts?" Minho asked. "Yes, but they seem suspicious," replied Dr. Park Nari from her science station. "They're demanding to know why a collective vessel is traveling with unknown alien ships." Commander Park Ji-hoon, who now served as co-captain of the joint human-alien fleet, walked over to join the conversation. "They have every right to be cautious. What we're offering will challenge everything they believe about the limits of consciousness." Over the past 6 months, the combined human-alien fleet had visited 12 different star systems. They had made contact with 7 different species, sharing consciousness expansion techniques with those who were willing to learn. The results had been remarkable. Species that had been locked in centuries-old conflicts had discovered new ways to understand each other's perspectives. Civilizations that had stopped growing technologically had suddenly begun innovating again. Planets that had struggled with environmental problems had found creative solutions that no one had thought possible before. But not every contact had been successful. 3 species had rejected the consciousness sharing entirely, preferring to maintain their existing limitations rather than risk the uncertainty of growth. 1 species had become so frightened by the possibilities that they had fled their home system entirely rather than continue the discussions. "The Valdari will be our most challenging contact yet," said Dr. Lee Soo-jin, who had become the fleet's expert on consciousness integration. "They've built their entire civilization on the principle that stability is more important than progress, which is exactly why they need this opportunity," added Engineer Kim Tae-won. "They've been using the same technologies and social systems for thousands of years. They've stopped growing entirely." The fleet approached the Valdari homeworld slowly and carefully. The New Horizons led the formation, followed by 5 human vessels and 3 more ships that had been built by species who had joined the Consciousness Expansion Alliance over the past months. "Captain, we're being scanned by multiple Valdari defense platforms," Do-hyun reported. "They're powering up weapon systems." That's expected, Commander Park said calmly. They see us as a threat to their way of life. In some ways, they're correct. A Valdari homeworld appeared on the main screen as they entered orbit. It was a beautiful planet with gleaming cities that looked exactly the same as they had looked 1,000 years ago. The Valdari had achieved perfection in their minds, and they had no desire to change anything. Incoming transmission from the planet's surface, announced the communications officer. A Valdari face appeared on the screen. The alien looked similar to humans, but with blue-tinted skin and large dark eyes. I am Chancellor Morvek of the Valdari Council. You will explain your presence in our system immediately. Minho took the lead in the conversation. Chancellor, I am Captain Kang Minho of the Terran Research Collective. We come with representatives of humanity and several other species to share discoveries that could benefit your people greatly. We do not require benefits from outsiders, Chancellor Morvek replied coldly. The Valdari have achieved social and technological perfection. We have no need for changes or improvements. Commander Park stepped forward. With respect, Chancellor, perfection is just another word for stopping growth. We're offering you the chance to continue evolving, to discover capabilities your species didn't know it possessed. Evolution ended when we reached our current state, the Chancellor said firmly. We will not permit disruption of our society. Dr. Lee Sujin tried a different approach. Chancellor, we're not asking you to change your society. We're offering to help your people expand their consciousness so they can choose their own path forward with greater wisdom and capability. Our consciousness is already perfectly adequate for our needs. The conversation continued for over an hour, but the Valdari leader refused to consider any form of consciousness expansion. He saw it as a threat to their stability and order. Finally, Commander Park made an offer that surprised everyone, including his own crew. Chancellor, what if we demonstrate the consciousness expansion process on ourselves? You could observe the entire procedure, see exactly what happens, and decide if it offers any value to your people. That is acceptable, Chancellor Morvek agreed. But the demonstration will take place on our world under our supervision, with our scientists monitoring every aspect of the process. It was risky. If something went wrong during the demonstration, the entire crew could be captured or killed by the suspicious Valdari. But it was also an opportunity to show a deeply conservative species that consciousness expansion was safe and beneficial. 3 days later, a small group from the fleet transported down to the Valdari homeworld. The demonstration took place in a research facility surrounded by Valdari scientists and security officers. Dr. Lee Sujin began by explaining the theoretical basis for consciousness sharing. Every intelligent mind contains far more potential than it normally uses. Consciousness expansion helps unlock that potential through quantum resonance between minds. She asked for a volunteer from the Valdari scientists. After some discussion, Dr. Tevik, a young researcher, agreed to participate. I want you to think about your most challenging research problem, Dr. Lee Sujin told him. Don't try to solve it. Just hold the question in your mind and allow your consciousness to become receptive to new perspectives. The human scientist closed her eyes and entered the meditative state that enabled consciousness sharing. Within moments, Dr. Tevik's expressions began to change. His eyes widened with surprise, then excitement. I can see connections I never noticed before, he said in amazement. The problem I've been working on for years. The solution is so obvious now. How did I miss it? But more importantly, several other Valdari scientists in the room also began showing signs of expanded awareness, even though they hadn't directly participated in the process. The consciousness expansion effect spreads naturally between minds that are ready to receive it, Dr. Lee Sujin explained. It's not something we impose on anyone. It's something that awakens when the mind is prepared. Over the following hours, more Valdari scientists volunteered to experience consciousness expansion. Each time they discovered new ways of thinking about problems that had puzzled them for decades. Their rigid certainty about the perfection of their society began to soften as they realized how much more they could become. Chancellor Morvek watched the demonstrations with growing concern. You are disrupting our social order, he accused. Our people have been content with their lives for centuries. Now you're making them dissatisfied with perfection, Commander Park replied gently. We're not making anyone dissatisfied. We're helping them remember that growth and discovery bring a deeper satisfaction than static perfection. By the end of the week, over 1,000 Valdari had experienced some level of consciousness expansion. They began forming discussion groups, sharing new ideas and questioning assumptions they had never examined before. Some Valdari remained opposed to the changes, preferring their old certainties to new possibilities. But many others embraced the opportunity to continue growing and evolving. Chancellor Morvek faced a choice similar to the one Captain Minho had faced months earlier. He could try to suppress the consciousness expansion and force his people back to their previous limitations, or he could allow them to choose their own path forward. What you've shown us changes everything, he admitted to the fleet's representatives. For 3,000 years we believed we had reached the peak of development. Now we see that we had barely begun to explore our potential. The choice belongs to your people, Commander Park assured him. Some may choose to continue as they were. Others may want to explore new possibilities. Both choices are valid. In the months that followed, the Valdari became active partners in the Consciousness Expansion Alliance. Their advanced manufacturing capabilities helped build new ships for the growing fleet. Their historical knowledge helped identify other species who might benefit from consciousness sharing. As the New Horizons prepared to leave the Kepler system, Captain Minho reflected on how much had changed since that first day when they discovered Earth. He had begun the mission as an observer studying primitive aliens. Now he was part of a movement that was transforming the entire galaxy. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Galactic Command, Lieutenant Dohyun announced.